So welcome everybody to this wonderful meeting of the Tigertales Toastmasters. This is our first meeting of the month and the first meeting of the year. So it's a very great pleasure for me to host this meeting today as a Toastmaster and also as to welcome you. So as I said, just a quick reminder, back is there. We have to turn our cameras on. Unless we have some extreme situation, you can turn it off. So without further ado, let us give the floor to the Toastmaster of the day, who is Destin. So that's me, that's still me. And as usual, our meeting will consist of three sections. So the first section is the prepared speeches. So we have 3 speeches today. Pritam, Bhakti, and Matt will be giving speeches. The second part is the table topic section, and that is the part where anybody can speak, guests or members of the club. They can jump in and answer to questions with no preparation. These are impromptu speeches. So the third and the first part of the meeting will be the evaluation sections, and evaluators have been assigned to the speakers and they will give their evaluation, and that section will be I think it's Alex who will take us through that section, right? Okay. The theme of this meeting is Happy New Year. If I'm correct, let me double check. Yeah, that's it. Happy New Year. It's a wish, so Happy New Year to everybody. And the word of the day is sparkling. I would let Roberta the grammarian to tell us more about the word of the day. So we have primary functionaries that will help us to go through this meeting, and these are our timer, our accounter, and our grammarian. So we will start with the timer, who will tell us what will she do during this meeting. Madam Timer.
Hello, everybody. I'll be the timer of the day. The prepared speeches section is from 5 to 7 minutes. After the 5 minutes, I'll show you the green light on my phone. After 6 minutes, I'll show you the yellow light, and at 7 minutes, I'll show you the red on my phone, and you have 30 seconds to wrap up. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Chitra. Our second functionary is the accounter, and today's accounter will be Ajita. So, Madam Accounter, can you tell us what will your role be?
Sure. I will be the accounter for tonight's meeting, and I'll be looking for the filler words like so things like that, which take away from our speeches. And I'll be giving my report at the end of this meeting. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Ajita. And our last but not least functionary will be Roberta, our grammarian. So Roberta, what will your role consist of?
Tonight, my role as grammarian will include looking for good usage of grammar and places where we can also improve upon our grammar. In addition, I will be looking for use of the word of the day, which is sparkling. Sparkling means to shine brightly with flashes of light, or if you're talking about a beverage, it can mean effervescent. So if you're talking about sparkling wine, or if you're talking about how your brand new engagement ring was sparkling in the bright lights. So best of luck tonight, everyone, with their grammar.
Thank you, Roberta. So these were our 3 primary functionaries. We usually have a clap master for this Zoom meeting, but I noticed that today there's no clap master. So anyways, let's dive right into the first part of this meeting. So these are the prepared speeches. We have 3 speeches, as I mentioned, and the first speaker of the day will be Pritam, and evaluating Pritam is Sarah. According to the theme of the day, I asked every speaker a question. What are your expectations or resolutions for this year? And Pritam said, my expectation for this year is to finish my PhD that I started 5 years ago. Pritam is doing an inspirational speech, and it is so based on Toastmasters International Speech Contest format. The title of Pritam's speech is The Best Gift, I think. But before I let Pritam speak, I will ask Sarah what would she expect from Pritam's speech.
Thank you, Destin. I will be assessing Pritam's speech using the same ballot that the judges will use at the international contest. If you have never attended or participated in an international contest, here are the categories that we're looking for. Speech development, effectiveness, speech value, physical, which is appearance, body language, and speaking area, voice, manner, appropriateness, and correctedness. So I will be looking for all of those things to help Pritam along on his international contest journey. Back to you, Destin.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. So as I said, Pritam's speech, the title of Pritam's speech is The Best Gift. The Best Gift, Pritam.
Hello everyone, welcome. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my research, and my research is on copper nanoparticles inks, and I did this research for my master's thesis. Today I'm going to share with you the readings that I found. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow Toastmasters and distinguished guests, that is how I spoke for 1 hour during my master's thesis defense. At the end of that horrible presentation, my professor came to me and said, Pritam, you spoke for 1 hour, but where was your story? I said, well, I am sharing my research. Why do you need a story? My professor gave me a sparkling smile and said, well, Pritam, if you want people to understand your research, you have to tell a story. I thought I am in trouble because I just finished my master's and I was going to do a PhD, which means more stories. I started looking, where are the people who can teach me how to tell a story? At the end of my search, I found a group of people who are called Toastmasters. I saw these people were extremely enthusiastic about telling stories. They prepared days in advance and practiced with their mentors to come and share a story with the audience. And not just that, they even did an impromptu story in table topics for 1 to 2 minutes. However, the best thing I liked about this group, they were willing to come down at my level. Someone who did not know how to tell a story and teach how I can share a story from my heart. I met my mentor Matt, and Matt told me, Pritam, nobody's story is perfect. My story is not perfect. And that is why your story is the best gift you can give to someone. People can connect and learn from your story. I did not understand what Matt was saying, but I started listening to his stories. As I listened to his stories, I felt his stories had almost a divine quality. It infused me with energy and enthusiasm. And I got excited to share my own story. At that time, I was researching on how squatting down like this can help people poop better. I went to do a TEDx talk, which is a platform where you share good ideas. I shared my story about squatting down, and I saw the kind of impact it had on people who heard that story. 5 people called me and told me that they had bought squatty potties, which helped them to squat, and they were pooping more efficiently. I thought, wow, my story is the best gift I can give to someone. As a researcher, I would research anything I could get my hands on, including urine. I started researching on a topic called urine therapy, which means using your urine as a medicine, and it also involved drinking urine. As I was going to present my talk for another TEDx platform, something happened that completely changed my story. I got a call from my brother back in India, and he told me our father has passed on. I was devastated. I didn't know if I wanted to share any more stories. I went back to India, and when I came back, my mentor Matt told me, Pritam, you have to continue telling your stories. Remember, your story is the best gift you can give, and I will go with you to listen to your story at TEDx. And Matt went to me. I went with him and shared my story. A few months after I had shared that story on urine therapy, I received a call from a man whose father was 70 years old and suffering from cancer back in Nepal. He called me and said, Preetham, my father has no cure for his cancer. Doctors have told him that there is no hope for him. Do you think urine therapy can help him? I told him, I can tell you the stories of people who have cured their cancer. I shared my story and all the other stories I knew. A few months later, I followed up with him and I found out that in just 3 months, his father was showing signs of recovery by practicing urine therapy. While my father had passed away, continuing to share my story helped someone else's father to live. Friends, your story is the best gift you can give to someone. Your story has a divine quality. It can impact others by infusing them with energy and enthusiasm. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Pritam, for that wonderful speech. Our second speaker is Matt, and evaluating Matt is Xavier. So Xavier, can you tell us what are you expecting from Matt's speech?
I will, after 1 minute, to give a chance to share love to Pritam in the form of chat. We can get a minute on the timer.
Sorry, excuse me.
It's all good.
So, Madam Timer, give us 1 minute so that we can give some feedback. Okay, that'll be 1 minute. So as I was saying, the second speaker is Matt, and evaluating Matt is Xavier. Xavier, can you tell us what are you expecting from Matt's speech?
You betcha. Matt is all focused on vocal variety tonight. And some of you might be thinking like I was, how many elements can there be to vocal variety? It's just speaking, right? And then I look at the evaluation sheet and there's loudness, pitch, quality, articulation, timing, variety, all of these things I'm looking for in Matt's speech tonight. And I'm very excited to hear what he's got. Back to you, Destin.
Thank you, Xavier. Matt is on his pathway of motivational strategies, and he's working on an elective project from level 3 called Vocal Variety. And the title of his speech is Embracing Imperfect Me. I also asked Matt the question, what are your expectations or resolutions for this year? And Matt said his expectation and hope is to be fully ready to connect with people when our world really reopens. Embracing Imperfect Me, Matt.
How have I grown through Tigertales Toastmasters? As I've been working on my level 4 project, which is to create a promotional video for Tigertales, I requested and received a number of videos from members about how they've grown through Toastmasters. And it got me thinking, how can I ask these members how they've grown if I don't know how I've grown? So I'm thinking about that. I went back 5 years to when I first joined Tigertales at RIT. Mr. Toastmaster, Toastmasters, and guests, when I joined for one primary reason, and that was to be okay being imperfect in front of others. You see, I have a perfection problem. And that perfection problem drove me into largely medical school and medical training. And when I joined Tigertales Toastmasters, I had just finished my residency training. Now, when we go through residency training, we wear sparkling white coats. These coats are clean. They don't show a single speck of dirt. There's not one bacteria on my coat. This is really important when I'm taking care of people in the hospital. But to me, wearing this white coat meant that I had to be perfect. See, there was a lot of insecurity in me that drove me into medicine, and something that made it even worse was that when I was in medical school especially, I was often shamed when I made a mistake. I remember one such scenario. I was sitting in the lecture with about 30 other medical students, and the professor up front was Dr. Noyes. Now, Dr. Noyes was known to be aggressive. He was tough, and he would go down the line with a question, student to student, to see who would know the answer. It always made me nervous, and on this particular Tuesday, he was coming down the line, getting closer to me, and my heart started racing. A flush went through my body, my ears started ringing a little bit, and I pulled out my book to look up the answer to his question. And he stopped everything. Matt, does this look like a library? You either know the answer or you don't. We'll skip over you. At that moment, I wanted to disappear completely, but being unable to disappear, I simply slouched a few inches further down in my seat. On another occasion, I had worked in the hospital for 28 hours, all day and all night. I was utterly exhausted. And after that, I had to go to a lecture for 1 hour after that shift. So I trudged into the lecture hall, sat down in a chair in the back, and as the professor droned on, my head sunk lower and lower, and all of a sudden, Matt, oh, yeah, what's the treatment for phase 2 pancreatitis? Serves you right. Don't fall asleep in class. Never sleep in my class. I had just finished a 28-hour shift, and I was expected to stay awake in a 1-hour lecture. Unreasonable. There were many other such incidences, and by the time that I came to Tigertales, I needed a place where I could be safe to be imperfect, to embrace my imperfections and make mistakes. And I've received that tenfold. But when I first started, it took a while for me to really grab a hold of that. I remember my first speech was about my time in Africa and funny stories that had happened while I was there. And it was so hard for me to practice my speech, even for a few friends. It felt so vulnerable. Actually, almost harder in front of a few friends than a whole room of people I didn't know that well. When I would write my first 15 speeches or so for Toastmasters, I would write every word out and I would memorize it. I would come to that speech basically performing that speech, and I would be thinking about the next line as I was speaking, which turns out is not a good way to connect to what you're saying. It wasn't a good way for me to connect. But in time, I was shown how to embrace my imperfections. I heard many vulnerable speeches, and this was one way that I saw members lead me into being vulnerable. I remember Xavier talking about his sister and how she'd passed. I remember Mommy talking about being put in prison for standing up for student rights. I remember Ahmed, who told us about his family, who forbid his relationship with a girl in Pakistan who had stolen his heart. And I remember Azim talking about his time in an Afghan refugee camp. Hard stories. And after each of these speeches, we would clap. For my icebreaker, I got a standing ovation. I remember being applauded for telling the timing rules. And at first I thought it was a little silly, but now I recognize that when we applaud, we say to each other, you belong here. We celebrate that you are a part of this, no matter what your role. And finally, I've been mentored. I have been mentored lovingly and carefully by Preetham and Matt Benedict and Brendan as I've created speeches, and they've given me the advice, step forward, lean into vulnerability instead of physically walking back. About this white coat again, it's very clean and it's sparkling. It makes me feel important to wear it, but it's pretty stiff, pretty stuffy, and I am grateful to everyone at Tigertales for helping me wiggle my way out of it and embrace my imperfections. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you very much, Matt, for this speech. Madam Timer, can we have 1 minute for feedback? Okay, that should be 1 minute. So our, our last speaker for today is Bhakti. And evaluating Bhakti, that should be Mami. Then Alex. Thank you, Alex. So Bhakti is working on a level 3 project for the presentation mastery pathway. And the goal of this project is to connect with storytelling. I asked Bhakti what are your expectations resolution for this year, and she says she has two. One is to develop her software engineering skills, and the second one is to be more fit this year. The title of Bhakti's speech is The Visual Train Ride. The Visual Train Ride, Bhakti.
Can you guys hear me first of all? Okay. As a kid, having a train ride was the most epic thing to have. Because traveling on a train meant two things for me. Either we were attending someone's wedding or we were visiting our aunts and cousins, both of which involved good food. My parents always preferred traveling during non-peak hours so that we could travel comfortably, and I always preferred the window seat. No matter the duration of the journey, the best part about these train rides was that I got to see the world, the real world. As I was traveling, I would see these landscapes that I didn't even know existed. There were plants and flowers with some wonderful colors, designs, and structures that fascinated me as a kid. But on the same journey, I would come across these places that were just littered with filth and plastic bottles, wrappers. Now, these places were also colorful. They had some different designs and structures, but not in a good way. While traveling, I would also pass across these huge giant malls that were decorated with bright neon lights. But on the same journey, I would pass through these slums that were made from materials that would not stand a pouring rain. In fact, on the train platform as well, there were people who would wear expensive clothing, not a crease on their clothes, and they had fine jewelry to accompany their look. I also noticed that I was not the only one looking at them at awe, but yet we forgot to look down at people who wore torn clothes, begging for some money to have a meal. Now, my mother has always discouraged me from helping beggars across train platform. Not because she thinks that they don't deserve our money, but because she thinks they may harm her little girl. But if a beggar was visibly disabled, my mother would just give them money. So as a kid, I asked her, does disability mean that a person is safe? And her reply was, I have the money, you don't. So let me decide what to do with it, and you just stay away from the strangers. But even as I grew up, I continued asking this question. And her reply was, it's not that all beggars are harmful, but the action of some of them has led her to believe that it's safe to stay away from beggars. But when she sees a disabled person, it just pains her to see them in that condition, and she just gives them her money. She thinks she does this for herself than the beggar themselves. But in these train rides, there is one thing that really bothers me. Now, if you're traveling in India, most of the trains have a separate coach for women. And if you're traveling in these women coaches, you are likely to come across a transgender woman. We call them chakkas in India. These transgender women would usually wear a sari with some cheap jewelry and makeup. And as soon as they get on a train, you will see them doing this. Amma, chanda de de amma, Bhagwan tera bhala karega. To translate that, they are asking for some money and God will bless them for their actions. Now, these transgender women can be a bit rude if you give them very small amount of money. And for this reason, some people just don't give them money ever because they consider them as arrogant. But some people do consider them as good luck, but would only give their money if they are on their way to an interview or an exam or a date. Now, these transgender women usually live in a separate society because they have been shunned from their families and communities. And they have a tendency to go to places if they hear about a new baby being born and to bless that baby with their blessings. But most of the people do not allow them in their houses. Luckily, I had parents who never thought ill about them and let them play with me and my sister when we were born. My mother thinks that they are some of the most happiest people in the country, given what they have been through. And she genuinely feels sorry for them because they cannot have children of their own. And I agree with her. These women are some of the nicest and happiest people I have met. And yet they are called chakkas, which is a very derogatory term in Hindi. Even today, when I ride on trains, I see the same thing. One train ride tells me so many different stories. Even though we all belong to this category called Homo sapiens, or as we call humans. I bet if all of these people had an equal footing in life, we all would be in a very different place today. But somehow, we decided that certain people will get certain opportunities based on sexual orientation, race, religion. I'll run out of breath before I state every category. Even though humans are considered to be the most intelligent species among animal kingdom, we clearly have failed. I would like to quote John Lennon. Imagine there is no country. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all people living in peace. You may say that I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you will join us and the world will be one. I hope one of these days, when I travel in a train, the story that they say will be the one that John Lennon saw for this world, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Bhakti, for this wonderful speech, wonderful story. Madam Timer, give us a minute so that we can give our feedback to Bhakti. Thank you, Madam Timer. This puts an end to our first section of the meeting. Now let's jump right into the second section of the meeting, which is the table topics. And leading us through this section is Ming Shu. I asked Ming Shu about the same question that I asked the speakers. What are your expectations or resolutions for this year? And Ming Shu said, my expectation will be that pandemic gets eliminated soon and my family members could be happy and healthy. So leading us through this section of table topics, Ming Shu.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this exciting section. In this section, everyone can jump in and give unprepared presentation based on different topics. And after this section, our technology wizards will send vote box to us. We can vote for the winner of table topics. Now let's welcome some functionaries in this section. Madam Timer, could you remind us the timing rule?
Hello, everybody. Hi, everybody. So the timing rules for that table topic section is from 1 to 2 minutes. At 1 minute, I'll show you the green card on my phone. At 1.5 minutes, I'll show you the yellow card on my phone. At 2 minutes, I'll show you the red card on my phone. You have 15 seconds to wrap up. To qualify for the table topic contest we have today, you should speak for at least a minute. Back to you, table topics master.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Timer. And Madam Grammarian, could you please remind us the grammar rule?
Sure. In order to qualify for the table topics contest tonight, you must use the word of the day, which is sparkling. I will put it in the chat. Again, we have two definitions you could potentially use. Sparkling means to shine brightly with flashes of light. So the disco ball was sparkling brightly as we danced the night away on the dance floor is one example. And it can also mean effervescent, as in I drank a lot of sparkling wine the other day, but I didn't actually do that. But maybe you did for New Year's. So use the word of the day and good luck.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Grammarian. And now let's move into our question part. Do we have any volunteers to answer the first question? Back to you. Yeah. We are always eager to learn new things. In 2021, I'd like to learn something about cooking because I've eaten too many takeouts. So what new skills or knowledge you want to learn in 2021?
Usually when a new year drops around, I have this list of resolutions that I plan to do. And this list will contain at least 10 items in it. And this has been the tradition every year. And I never complete any one of them. Never. And that motivation will last for the first 2 or 3 days. So this year I decided to keep that list short. So I have only 2 items in my list this year to develop my skills as a software engineer, because I'm pursuing my master's in software engineering. So I would like to improve my skills and to be fit, because during 2020, I haven't been out much and I've been eating like there is no tomorrow. So there has definitely been changes in my body. So this year I plan to be more fit by exercising and having a watch on my diet, so that I have a sparkling body at the end of the day, or at the end of the year to be exact. And hopefully I am a good enough software engineer that I can work in one of my dream companies by the end of the year, as I'll be graduating in December this year. Back to you, Mr. Table Topics Master.
Thank you, back to you. Congratulations for your job. Thanks. Our second question, who wants to answer it? Ruchi. We are all excited to welcome 2021. I wish my coming year could be full of happiness, challenges, and progress. Here's the question. How would you describe your coming year in 3 words?
Thank you, Ming Shu. How would I describe my new year in 3 words? The first word that comes to my mind is gratitude. Gratitude because I have survived 2020, and not just survived, I've thrived in 2020. I have been able to learn so many things, read much more books than I had a resolution for. So I'm very grateful for that. I am grateful for the peace, and I want to continue that gratitude moving forward. And I am grateful for the people who have continued to bless us with their presence, with their prayers, and with their motivation in our lives. The second word that comes to my mind is growth. Because it's a new year, we all have resolutions like Bhakti, so did I. And this time, so that I don't forget the path I'm taking,
I decided to email my resolution to myself in July so that I'm reminded in the next 6 months if I am following the track or not. So they are scheduled for 6 months. And the third word that would come to my mind is God, just to develop that connection with God. And because of the presence, I have a family, and their sparkling smiles are still with me over long distance. With God, I want to pray that they are safe and healthy and happy wherever they are. So the 3 words for my life for this year would be grateful, gratitude, growth, and God. With that, back to Mingshu.
Thanks for your beautiful answer. Yeah, I love it. For our third question, do we have any volunteers? Yeah, Ajita. Oh, Ajita is first. In China, when New Year is coming, family members will gather together and have a wonderful meal. We will make sweet dumplings and pork dumplings, and every child will get real pocket money from adults, which I really miss. So, how do people celebrate New Year in your culture?
Thank you for that question, Mingshu. When I look at New Year, for me, if I look at the cultural New Year, it's generally Diwali. But we do celebrate the English New Year based on the English calendar. And in my house, we generally get together with all the cousins and my family. We all wear new sparkling clothes, and we have a huge spread of food, including all the preparations, all the specific preparations which my mom makes, which I prefer. I generally like whatever she makes. And then we have a potluck where 3 or 4 families from all my cousins come together and we get different foods. So whoever makes best, whatever they make best, they get it. And then we all have a gala time celebrating, dancing, and welcoming the new year at 12 at midnight and have fun. So that's pretty much how we celebrate New Year. Thank you for that question. Although this year it was a little different for me, I decided not to celebrate at night, but rather go for a nice drive into the Shenandoah Valley the next morning to welcome the new year on a different note, where I wish to go more, to experience more outdoors and be more in the mountains this year. Back to you, Mr. Table Topics Master.
Thanks for your lovely answer. Yeah. So, Madam Timer, how about the time?
Yes, we have time for one more. If you want to.
Oh, okay. So I have one last question. Who wants to answer it? Hi, Christine. Yeah. For this question, I want to ask you, what worries you about 2021? What worries you about 2021?
In 2021, I don't know that I'm going to be worried about anything after what we've dealt with 2020. We have made it through a pandemic. I continued to work. I started a new job. And if I made it through that after working somewhere for 25 years, I feel like I can make it through just about anything. I'm grateful for everything that I've learned in this last year. And even though we couldn't spend much time with family, I'm grateful for the time that we've always had with our family. So I'm just looking forward to being able to see them again and seeing their sparkling smiles. I think that 2021 will, with the vaccine, I'm not as concerned anymore. I think that good things are to come, and I'm usually optimistic, so I don't usually worry about things. I really try to be positive and find the good in everything. So I'm really hoping that this year just brings nothing but good, even though we started off a little rough already. And I don't really have much of anything to worry about this year, but I like seeing all your sparkling smiles. That was a little rough.
Thank you, Christine. I love your positive attitude. This question is my bad. So, Madam Timer, was everyone on time?
Yes, everybody qualifies in the timing section.
Yeah, thanks. Madam Grammarian, did everyone use word of the day?
They did.
Wonderful. Yeah. So we can vote for the winner of the table topics. Yeah. So, back to Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you very much, Ming-Shu, for these wonderful questions. And that puts an end to the second section. Let's jump now to the third and last section of the meeting, which is the general evaluation. And leading us through this section is
Alex Turner.
So sorry, I asked Alex, what are your expectations for this year? And he told me that he has a word for this year. So it seems like each year Alex has a word that motivates him throughout the year. And for this year, the word is dive, which has two meanings for him. The first meaning is dive is his meditation to act with commitment, focus, and abandon. And the second is a commitment to peace. So leading us through this section, Alex.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters. Evaluation is what makes Toastmasters Toastmasters. That when we get together and we speak, it's all well and good. We get to share our stories, that greatest gift. But how do we make that greatest gift even better? By getting feedback, getting these evaluations of our speeches and of the way that we communicate so that we can be even better at the way that we tell our stories and the way that we lead. So there's a couple different sections to this. First off, we'll have our evaluations of the prepared speeches, and then we'll have a few functionary reports, as you heard from the folks that are watching different aspects of the meeting at the beginning of the meeting. And then I'll give a general evaluation of the meeting, which would be a little shorter because I've been focused on Bhakti's speech evaluation. But our first evaluator for the evening will be evaluating Preetam's speech. And our first evaluator for the evening is Sarah. Help me welcome Sarah.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. evaluator, fellow Toastmasters, and especially Freedom. For those of you who don't know, perhaps because you're new to the club, Freedom has pretty much for the entirety that I've been in Toastmasters competed in every international contest. So, and he's also gotten fairly far. So I have judged his speech as harshly as possible in order to help prepare him. So I'm not trying to be mean if you don't know me or Freedom. I'm trying to help him get farther than he's ever been before. First of all, Freedom, I have a copy of the ballot that I will send to you, and I wrote at the bottom under first place, very likely Freedom if I were judging. So there's that to start you off with. I loved your use of space. You used not just the width of your screen, which you were very aware of as well. A lot of us have had trouble keeping our hands, like right now, I'm on the wrong side, keeping your hands inside there if you're using gestures, but you used the width well. You also used the depth of the screen. You stepped in to emphasize points. You are very snazzy. I know that's very important to you. And there's been jokes about you picking on other members for not dressing up for speeches, but it does make an impression. It is important. So he's not here, but if he were here, the member that we're speaking of, we would point out to him, Freedom looks awesome tonight. Your confidence, as always, well, as you demonstrated, not as always, but the shift from your beginning speech where you're demonstrating your initial skills to where you are now, when you snapped into the Freedom we know now, it made it that much more powerful to see who you were and to see who you are now. Those were all in the second category, which are the delivery. Your delivery is spectacular. Your, good golly, I just saw the time. Your content, which is the most important, let's go there next, was wonderful as well, of course. One thing that I have for what you might want to shift a little bit. So the transition from when you're talking about your TED Talk on urine therapy to hearing about your father's death. It was a very abrupt transition, and that's not a bad thing. That's probably how it was for you. Either acknowledge that with us to say, here you were going along and now, bam, you received this news, or give us a transition. I like option A better personally. Finally, the last section is the language. This is where I was a little harsher with you for the grammar. Your grammar was fine. I didn't notice any errors, but as someone who loves grammar, I also didn't notice anything that stood out as either rhetoric or I'm sure you used some, but it didn't stand out to me and I look for it. So find other ways to incorporate more of it, perhaps. Also, appropriateness, I want to address this even though I'm going over time. You talked about sharing stories without doing this pat on the back to Toastmasters thing. You didn't mention Toastmasters, which I love. Having international speeches that are just about Toastmasters is like a no-go for me. So I love that you talked about the principles of Toastmasters without saying, hooray for Toastmasters. Overall, I absolutely love your speech, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing you go all the way to the world stage. Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Sarah. Seasoned evaluator who is focused in on that rhetoric and grammar. I'm sure that you have a lot more great feedback for him on your ballot that you're going to send to him. Our next evaluator for this evening will be evaluating Matt Mack's speech, and evaluating his speech will be Xavier. So I'm just going to turn my computer a little bit. Help me welcome Xavier.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator, fellow Toastmasters, but especially Matt. Absolutely loved your speech. It was definitely you and elevated from previous speeches. But I want to talk just about your vocal variety tonight because there's all types of good stuff and some opportunity there as well to include. First off, something that's very strong that you do is your pacing, that you manage to slow down very much so when you're trying to make that point. And an example of that is when you had your doctor instructor going down the line, asking questions. I just love that so much because you kind of just brought us into that moment with you by slowing it down. I didn't see as much of the other side speeding things up to make a point, maybe something to consider, but your strength definitely lies in slowing down. One key opportunity for you though is your volume, especially in this format that although we're limited in motion, we have a strong opportunity for volume because we have this opportunity to get really close and you can almost like whisper, but everyone can hear you. I hope everyone heard. But one part that I thought would be amazing to do that is you were talking about how you were a doctor. So through this history, I thought I had to be, and you come real close and you say, perfect, like as like some sort of bad word. Or on the other side, you can back up and then that gives you an excuse to yell without people like freaking out. Although like people in your background might freak out. So you might not want to do this with your kid, but opportunity is you could become your doctor and say, Matthew Mack, how come you cannot understand this? This is not a library, no books or whatever goes there, you know, like really yell at us, make us feel awkward. Finally, another strong point is your enunciation, which kind of goes back to your pacing that in addition to slowing down, you're really good at finding the right words to enunciate to bring the point home. For example, everyone clapped their hands for the timing rolls. Can you believe that? I felt awkward, but then it was fine because I felt appreciated. Overall, you gave us a nice clinic on vocal variety. I'd love to see this speech again because I think it brings out something in you that's really true and can be modified to be even better. Back to you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Xavier. Our last evaluator for the evening, evaluating Bhakti's speech, will be me. So, hi, everybody. Especially Bhakti. Especially Bhakti. Thank you for this speech tonight. Your job was to give us a story and to use the elements of storytelling in connecting with us. And you did a wonderful job. Some of the elements of storytelling that we're familiar with are characters and setting and plot. And the way that that plot is driven is by conflict. Now, as you're listening to the speech, you might not have heard the way that Bhakti built up this conflict. And so that's one of the things that I really want to focus in on, because I think there's a really good strength in that, and there's an opportunity in it as well. But first, let's talk about characters. We had Bhakti and her experience with the trains. We had her aunts and cousins. We had some more from her mother and some characterizations with her mother of how she deals with beggars, whether they're visibly disabled or not, and an opportunity for humor there. Well, I have the money, so do what I say. Let me make those decisions. And just lots of great characterizations of your mother. In terms of setting, we had the train, and then we had the window seat on the train, and we've all kind of had that experience of sitting and watching things go by. And the landscapes and the train platform, you had different settings throughout your speech as well. And the only thing that I will say about your characters and your settings is that there's an opportunity for more description. That if you pull out filler words, you can say a lot about a setting in a very short amount of time. That if you are very careful with your word choice, you can add color and depth into a setting or to a person by giving them just a little bit of description. What do they look like? What do they sound like? And if you find the right word, it can add so much depth to storytelling that these luscious landscapes filled with colorful flowers, that just that little bit of word crafting can help to add that little bit of depth. But you definitely had all these different settings and the characters that help to create the story. Now I want to focus on the plot, because you did a brilliant job. The way that you started with the setup of this train and how this happens, and then you start to create conflict with these opposites, the opposites of flowers and these landscapes filled with filth. And then you had malls. And so there's this first thing where it's just natural beauty and kind of natural ugliness, but then there's malls and slums, and that adds tension. And then we're on the train platform, and there's stranger danger, and how that creates the tension grows. And we have this opportunity to come talk with your mother and have that experience. And then finally, the tension grows the most. You said, what really bothers me is this interaction with these transgender women. And I think this is where the opportunity is, because you created all of this tension. And I think there's an opportunity to tell a more well-packaged conclusion that then releases that tension for us. And the way that your mother interacted with them, to let them into the home and play with you, that there's an opportunity in that to release all of that tension that you had created with these opposites and these tensions, to release that in, here's this beautiful way that your mother is accepting of this alternative culture and the way that they sort of live apart, and this luck experience that's all wrapped into that culture. And that your message of unity was beautiful as well. And that if you give us that transition from that moment of highest tension to the message of unity, it's a really powerful speech. So well done. Looking forward to hearing this speech again. I think this is one that if you were to work it into a contest speech, giving it over and over would help you craft it that way. Thank you. So I'd now like to hear from our functionaries. The timer can let me know that I went over on my evaluation. Chitra, do you have anything else to report?
So yeah, all the okay. Hi everyone. So all the speakers, I don't know, did they speak to each other and they found that 6 minutes and 50 seconds is what everybody should stick at? All the 3 speakers were in that timeline. The evaluators, Sarah and Alex, yeah, exceeded a little bit. It's fine as long as it's helping everybody grow. And Xavier was on time at 2 minutes and 45 seconds. And back to you, Mr. Alex.
Thank you, Madam Timer. Let's hear next from our A counter. Ajita, what did you hear tonight?
Thank you, Alex. With a lot of seasoned speakers tonight, most of my sheet is blank, but I do have some captured where I heard some ahs and ums from Bhakti. But for me, I think I have a couple of them. And I also heard a couple of ahs and ums from our Toastmaster Destin, and a couple of and ums from Christine. And that's about it. That's a small report from my side. Back to you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Madam A counter. And for our last functionary report, let's hear from our grammarian, Roberta.
Tonight, we had some really great things show up in our meeting. We had all of our table topic speakers use the word of the day, in addition to several of the other speakers and functionaries, specifically both Preetam and Matt wove that word into their speeches that I heard. A lot of the other things I'm going to kind of lump together. What I noticed overall is, as a club, we are really good with alliteration and repetition. So some things I heard were extremely enthusiastic, energy and enthusiasm, perfection problems, stiff and stuffy, greatest gift, seasoned speaker, all wonderful usage of grammar. A couple other things that I thought were really great, specifically The fact that Bhakti translated for us, that's always good from a grammarian's perspective, for those of us that aren't well-versed in multiple languages, that you were able to speak something in your native tongue or in another tongue, and then translate it for everyone to be able to follow along. That was really wonderful. And especially whenever you pointed out specifically that one of the terms was a derogatory term in Hindi, I would have no clue. So that was really well done. A couple nitpicky things just that we can all improve upon. I heard much ado without further ado. Again, we kind of want to stay away from that. It's basically saying, hey, what I just said isn't important. And as Toastmasters, we don't ever want to convey the message that what we share isn't important. One other thing I heard was most happiest. So it's either most happy or happiest. I don't jam those two together. And something else I noticed, I'm not sure whether to put this in the good or bad column, more just observation. We're good at repetition when it's good, and then we're kind of good at repetition maybe when it doesn't do a whole lot for us, which is all of our evaluators, and it wasn't just tonight, used the same intro, which ends with, and especially speaker. It's not bad, but I think as a club, we can certainly expand our variety of introductions, if you will, and look to grow, especially if in the future you plan on maybe doing the evaluation contest. So I will wrap it up with that and turn it back to our general evaluator, Alex.
Well, thank you especially, Roberta. Now I'll give a little bit of a general evaluation of the meeting. I have been so impressed with how our club has managed to keep such a good energy going in these meetings with a digital meeting. It is so hard to do, and our club has done it so well. That's definitely the headline, I think, for all of our meetings since this has been going on. We've gotten really good at it. I wanted to speak to Destin as our Toastmaster. Our club does a really good job of introducing speakers, and Destin, you definitely continued that as you were our Toastmaster tonight in terms of going the extra mile to learn what folks' expectations were for this year and sharing that in a way that helps us get to know them a little bit. Of course, we know them because they're part of the club, but it helps us to connect with them and want to listen to their speech. So excellent work with that. I would say that as Toastmaster, one of your jobs is to project a little bit more confidence as you're making your way through the agenda. And even if you're not quite sure, it's okay to not be sure, but that being able to just kind of bowl through it and I'm going to check the agenda right now to be sure and check it and then come back. That extra bit of confidence of being able to kind of on your feet dance your way through the agenda, even if you're not sure, that's okay. But the confidence, I think, is what would help you to fill that Toastmaster role even better than you did. But you did a great job, like I said, with the introducing speakers and helping us want to get to know them and hear their speeches, which is the most important job of the Toastmaster, which is to make whoever it is that you're introducing look great, and you did that. So well done with that. Destin, great energy for the meeting. Love to see that we're still having guests and new members. So Christine, welcome. So great meeting. I'm going to turn it back over to our Toastmaster, Destin.
Thank you, Alex. Before I turn over to the president of the club, it is time to reveal the winner of the table topics. And for that, I will ask you to unmute yourselves and make a drum roll. So today we have two winners. It's a tie. We have Christine and Bhakti. And Ruchi, sorry. Christian and Ruchi, sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we will hear from the president of the club, Bhakti, to close the meeting.
Great meeting today. I got to applaud for myself thrice today. So I consider this an very good start towards the new year. I see a guest today, Christian. I would like to hear your feedback about today's meeting.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself.
It happens all the time.
I find it very interesting. I love listening to everybody's, all the speakers, all the stories. It's a nice way to get to know everybody. And I do like listening to the evaluators in order to, I like the feedback. So I think it's really helpful. And I have even used some of what I've learned, even though this is only my second meeting, even during the first one, I've been able to use some of that in the meetings that I've given at work. So it really is helpful.
Thank you, Christine. Great meeting today. I see a lot of people stepped up for different roles today, even though there were people missing from the agenda. That is what I like about this club. People just volunteer to do certain roles. And with this, first of all, I would like to wish everyone a happy new year. And I hope everyone has one of their resolutions as improving in their public speaking skills as well. I would encourage everyone to take a little bit more effort in their speech and try to improve their communication skills as well. And one of the ways you can do that is next week's speech contest. So if you're interested in participating, you can either contact Hassan, who is not here today. But if you're unable to contact him, you can drop us an email, and I have dropped our email ID in the chat. And I hope to see a lot of participation. So next week we'll be having our speech contest. And with that, I conclude today's meeting. Thank you, everyone.